Good afternoon. My name is Sean Evans, and thank you for joining us here today. I am the President and CEO of the Meridian Chamber of Commerce, and we are here today in partnership with the City of Meridian, the Central District Health, Crush the Curve Idaho, and numerous other partner organizations and individuals as we share with you the program that we have developed to assist Meridian businesses as they reopen for business. Our campaign of Meridian healthy and open for business is not only to educate the businesses on basic guidelines of reopening on the Central District Health and CDC guidelines. It will also allow businesses to demonstrate to the public that they're doing so in a manner to keep Meridian healthy and open for business. Online today with us.
Pretty sure this
Mac, is that you? All right, good deal. Thank you. Online and speaking with us today is just a few of our partner organizations that have developed this program to support the Meridian business community, as well as business leaders and best practices when it comes to safely opening. Myself, Scott Paradis from the Central District Health, Tina Upson with Crush the Curve Idaho. We also have with us Jody St. Martin, the communication specialist with the City of Meridian, and Mac Mayer with Life Church Meridian. So with that, let me just share with you a little bit about our program and what we're hoping to accomplish with that. We will be opening it up for questions at the end. You can enter your question anytime during the session in the chat window, and we'll be able to get to those questions at the end of the program. The premise behind our campaign was getting businesses back open and restarting our economy. And this is why this group started. We had initially pursued efforts to get everyone open as early as possible, but we also saw the bigger issue of reopening amidst the COVID-19 virus crisis is, will the public return to the stores or establishments when they reopen? We're contacted daily by our business members on how does the governor's plan apply to my business and when can I actually open and what guidelines does my business need to follow? While the Meridian Chamber of Commerce is not an authority on the plan or the recommended guidelines, we're here to help the Meridian businesses understand them better. The last thing we want to happen is our local businesses is that they go to the effort and expense to open, bring back their employees, restock their shelves, and open to the public. And then the consumers not visit their establishments out of fear or concern for their safety. The Central District Health and the CDC have developed some guidelines to reduce your risk when out in public. And if businesses can follow those guidelines as they reopen and demonstrate to the public that they're serious about the public safety and health, then that will help build consumer confidence necessary to restart our economy. The Meridian Chamber of Commerce has launched Keep Meridian Healthy and Open for Business to help businesses restore and build that consumer confidence. As the businesses open, according to the governor's 4-stage Idaho Rebounds program, we will assist Meridian businesses by conducting business industry specific webinars like this one that will provide information from the Central District Health and the CDC and others on basic guidelines for that industry. The webinars will also feature local business leaders that will have taken even further steps to ensure that they're reopening in a safe and responsible manner. After the businesses participate in the webinar for their industry, they will be provided free of charge collateral material to display in their store that recognizes them as participating in the Keep Meridian Healthy and Open for Business campaign. These materials include door signage that shows they're a part of the campaign, posters for in-store display that talks about the basic things that they're doing in their store and to keep their customers and their patrons safe. It will also include some social media materials for you to share online to demonstrate that you're a part of the campaign and to keep Meridian healthy and open for business. It will also include inclusion on the website and marketing campaign that we're developing and launching to restore that consumer confidence. Our program goes beyond what some other communities are doing by just creating a list of businesses that are complying. We're helping them understand what it means for the business and sharing best practices from other industry-specific leaders. The guidelines out there are not a one-size-fits-all solution for every business. We don't know what we don't know. The industry-specific webinars seek to educate beyond a sheet of written guidelines, educating businesses on the additional protocols they can implement for their specific type of business is where the value comes in. And that value is the safety for employees and customers. Here you see this week's industry-specific webinars. All of these can be accessed from the website, keepmeridianhealthy.org. And we encourage businesses to sign up to learn about their specific industry. To be in compliance with the governor's 4-stage plan, businesses can only be provided the collateral materials when their business is scheduled to open according to the plan. As a follow-up, after opening, the participating businesses will be encouraged to answer surveys from the Meridian Chamber on how their opening is going and the sentiments from their patrons returning to the stores and businesses. This will assist us in the phase 2 of our program as we build out our business revitalization team to support Meridian businesses. Look to keepmeridianhealthy.org website to see a full schedule of industry-specific webinars. With that, I want to turn it over to Scott Paradis with Central District Health to share with you the guidelines for general businesses that are able to open as of today. Scott, you want to turn on your camera and take it over?
Hello, I'm Scott Paradis with the Central District Health Department. Thank you so much for having me. We've come up with a bit of guidance information from the Central District Health that we'd like everyone to be able to review, and hopefully it will help whenever you're trying to open up your businesses or places of worship. So I'll just run through that really quickly today and just give you a bunch of quick bullet points about what we feel are the most important things when reopening. So first off, everyone should have developed a policy on what everyone coming into their establishment or place of worship should be doing. So whether that's people working there or people coming to visit or worship at your church or wherever it is. So make sure you have a well-defined policy of what everyone should be doing when they come inside and what you're expecting everyone to have done previous. Make sure you have that policy well developed and easily posted in multiple places for people to have access to it. So either whether it's posted online like at your church's website or distributed through email or even just posted on doors. So when people come through or come in, they're able to see it as soon as they're entering. The next most important thing we want to go over is sanitation. Basically, before opening back up, everything should be thoroughly cleaned and sanitized, including all frequently touched surfaces like doorknobs, door handles, hymn books for the churches, things like that. So everything that gets touched should be thoroughly cleaned and sanitized before opening it all. We recommend using a chlorine-based sanitizer, which is basically bleach water. The CDC has a good list of different sanitizers that should be used when talking about COVID-19. So if you're at all in question about what type of sanitizer should be used, the CDC has an excellent resource for that. All right, next, when you do have people entering your church or wherever it is, make sure that they are actually healthy when they're coming in. If they are showing any signs of coronavirus like fever, cough, muscle aches, anything along those lines, please ask them to stay at home. Or if they've been in contact with anyone who is suspected or have been known to have COVID-19, they should stay at home as well. Don't come in and run the risk of contaminating other people inside. Next, good hand hygiene or good hygiene in general should be encouraged. So that's having everyone who comes in do a thorough job washing their hands. So 20 seconds of washing their hands with hot or warm running water, heavy soap lathering, scrub all the important parts of the hands, then rinse it off with, again, warm water and dry them off. We also recommend hand sanitizer, alcohol-based hand sanitizer be placed at multiple places throughout the building, just so people can access that frequently whenever they may have come into contact with something, to just wash their hands or then use the sanitizer on their hands as well. Next, we encourage people coming into the church to practice social distancing. So when you have people entering the building, try to have markers set up for 6 feet in between different people if you happen to have a line forming, so people don't get too close. When inside the actual building, either mark off spaces on the pews or remove seats if seats are removable, so that people will know how far apart to sit in between each other. If you do have some sort of situation where a line is forming, have someone who works there or a volunteer monitoring everyone to make sure that no one is actually getting too close during the line forming process. A lot of times congregations will have a certain period where they interact with each other, greet each other, shake hands or anything, or give hugs, things like that. We encourage you to cease that operation or cease that time for now. You can, instead of doing handshakes and hugs, just do hi, wave to each other, or nods or bows or something that's non-contact with other people. When it comes to time for collections or offerings of money, that whole process needs to be kind of changed a bit from what it usually is when people pass around an offering plate. Instead of that, there are a few other options, like going digital with online donations, or having people mail in donation checks, or even just have a donation box that when people put in money into a donation box, they can put on hand sanitizer before, so then they aren't running any risk of contamination while touching the box. And finally, whenever doing any sort of communion, that should be done a bit differently than it has in the past. Whoever's distributing the communion needs to put on hand sanitizer and preferably gloves when handing out the bread to people, and instead of actually placing it on someone's tongue or in their mouth, just place it into their hands with their gloved hands, so there's no or a reduced amount of contamination. And when it comes to the wine cup, don't have everyone drinking from the same one. Find a way to have smaller, more individually portioned amounts, so people can not be using the same cup or glass as however many other people come. So those are just a few of the quick guidelines we thought up here at the Central District Health Department for places of worship. We have an entire guidance document at our website at cdh.idaho.gov, and I know that the CDC has also worked up several good guidance documents as well. So if you have any questions or anything you want to look up, please feel free to look those up at any time. And that's about it for me. Thank you so much.
Scott, thank you very much. Great information you shared there, and we'll dive a little bit deeper in that with churches here momentarily. Tina Upson, with the Executive Director of Crush the Curve Idaho. Tina, to pass it over to you so you can share a little bit about some of the testing availability in our community.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. So just first off, I want to thank Meridian Chamber of Commerce. Really has been incredible, the leadership that you guys have taken and the opportunity that we've had at Crush the Curve Idaho as we address community health all across the state, to be able to say, hey, look to what Meridian's doing, the approach that you've taken that can then be applied to other communities has just been such a blessing, and we're grateful for your work. I also have brought with me today, and I'm grateful to have Ed Castledine from Salter Medical, the CEO of Salter Medical. He's here. The work that we've been able to do and aggressively do around the state would be impossible without medical providers like Salter coming alongside of us, showing support, moving at the tempo that needed to be moved at in the sense of urgency that isn't always comfortable. And Salter just showed up in such a big way in this valley for us over and over again. So I'm grateful to have Ed with me today. As some questions come up, I know when we did a webinar yesterday, there's definitely some questions that come up that are a lot more on the medical side, and I would feel the most comfortable having a medical provider here, and that's why I've asked him to join in. So what I wanted to talk about is testing, right? And so at Crush the Curve Idaho, what we did is we had an executive board that came together, CEOs from all over the state, and said, hey, what can we do during this time? How could we show up for the state of Idaho? What could we help with? And at the time, and I'm sure a lot of you see this on the news anyways, the biggest issue and the biggest gap and struggle was testing, the ability to actually execute on tests for individuals who were sick. The test kits were unavailable. And so you were having to prioritize, who do we test? And meanwhile, we're all looking at testing results to try to make decisions and understand how our state is doing or how the nation's doing. And we have this shortage and this gap on test kits and availability. So one of the things I want to call out and make really clear and get the information out is on a testing availability perspective. If somebody is sick in our valley and needs to be tested and desires to be tested for COVID, we do not have a shortage of test kits. And that is one of the things that we worked really hard to do, and then to be able to disseminate those out to medical providers. And so if somebody were to go to Salter Medical and be symptomatic and wanting to be tested for COVID, they have the kits to be able to deliver that. Also, if somebody had been exposed to somebody who tested positive for COVID, again, they would be able to go get those tests. And so long gone are the days of where we all believed if we went in and had symptoms, we would be turned away because we didn't meet this very strong filtering system that needed to exist because of lack of testing kits. So that is there. What I also want to speak to is there's two types of tests, and there's a lot of noise around these. And so one of the things that I wanted to start with is this test kit availability and the testing shortage. All of this was revolved around the COVID PCR test. And so this is the test that has the nasal swab. This is when I believe I currently am shedding virus. Either I have symptoms myself, or I've been exposed to somebody who is tested positive for COVID or is believed to have COVID-19. These are the nasal swabs. This is the testing shortage. This is that test. This is the one in which, as you talk about, and as we see corporations working through what's corporate reopening looking like, or in your case, is organizational reopening and trying to bring consumer confidence, having a testing protocol is going to be important. And I know we're all waiting on, and we'll be working with the state on what those recommendations are per group and how that needs to look. But just knowing that when you have somebody in your organization that's maybe part of your clergy or whatever that is having symptoms or has had exposure, that getting them this active virus test is an important step one and can be done here. And we have providers that have the ability to do that. If you want to move to the next slide for me, Sean, the other
Sure.
type of test that I want to talk about is the antibody testing. And this one's gotten a lot of news lately because we've done it with Crush the Curve, Idaho. We have facilitated some mass testing here in the valley and in other parts of the state. This is a different type of test. This isn't a nasal swab. What this is checking for is whether or not you've already had the virus. It's looking for antibodies to see if you have already had the virus, been exposed. This is a tool, a helpful tool for us to understand community health from a how many people have already been exposed perspective. It's also a tool that has allowed for Idahoans to be able to answer questions that they had about whether or not they had already been sick with the virus, had already been through it, et cetera. It's really important on this one, and I wanted to make sure and talk about is that the results of this test are not so that somebody now runs around like they have a force field around them, or we're saying you could behave different or not adhere to the different recommendations from the local health district and the CDC in regards to social distancing and behaviors. But it's just a data point that's going to be really a necessary part of studying this disease, understanding it over time, understanding if antibodies today mean something a year from today, et cetera. And without having any information for us to be able to measure, we simply are blind to that. This testing is something that is done via blood draw, so it's not the nasal swab. A lot of people have a question about the method of testing. Is it FDA approved? It is approved through the Emergency Act, and I'm probably calling that wrong. I can correct me if I'm saying it wrong. But it's one of 7 tests in the states that have been approved as the test that we use. We partnered with the University of Washington to do the serology testing through them. And that's a lot of the mass testing that we've been doing here. Again, this is for people that have no symptoms. They don't currently believe they have COVID. They believe they may have had it, and or they're choosing to come in and be tested to help us just get a richer understanding of community health and the exposure levels that have already happened within the Valley, and then the other testing areas in the state. One more slide for me, and testing protocols. So again, what I can speak to, and Ed could help as well from Salter, is what we see corporations coming and requesting for testing protocols. So some of the large employers in the state have brought on their own specialists, right? So in light of the pandemic, they've hired, a lead for corporate reopening for them, and it's the, somebody with a degree of infectious disease degree from Georgetown, and they're helping understand what's the best rollout protocol for this company or this organization. And in those protocols, there are testing protocols that are called out. And so we can kind of speak to what we're seeing being asked for and requested by corporations and by organizations. And like I said before, we're all really looking forward to the guidelines coming from the state and from the government, and how best we can buoy those up, support those, deliver on those as a united front. But one of the things that we see asked for is, as corporations or organizations are opening back up. So hi, I'm a place of worship, and I haven't been open for months. Some would say, let's get tested for active virus, even though nobody feels sick right now, because we hear enough information to know, and we know from the data that asymptomatic carriers are out there. Before we open up, let's just know, does anybody currently have the virus? So it is optional, and we do have the kits available here in the Valley for you to have your employees tested for the active virus before you open up. The other question is, do you have both tests, right? Do you also have them checked for antibodies? We are seeing a lot of corporations elect to do both, and they're calling it a baseline. They just want to have an understanding of where they're at. And then logistically, we typically are running these through more of our mass testing sites. Again, non-symptomatic zones. We're not sending sick people to the same place as people who have no symptoms. But one of the things that I thought was a good idea, and I know that typically these are smaller to medium-sized businesses that are working with the chamber, et cetera, is, just think about the cost planning. What is going to be the testing protocol for your organization? Is it a line item from here to, call it 2 years from today, whatever that needs to be from a budget perspective, in what you ask an employee to do when they feel sick from a testing perspective. Is there anything, Ed, that you feel like maybe I should call out just kind of along those lines? I know there'll be a question answer that comes up in a while, but is there anything I kind of missed that you think would be helpful?
Can you hear me all right? By the way, I'm having trouble with my computer.
Yes.
Yep, we hear you.
Okay. Thank you, Tina, and appreciate being able to speak for just a couple of seconds. The main thing I want to emphasize, well, two things I want to emphasize. One is, we appreciate you guys' patience as this thing evolves. One of the things that's unique, I think, at least in my 30-year career of being in healthcare, I don't remember a time where we've had such a diverse set of opinions about what we should be doing. And so as we get back to work as soon as we possibly can and do it safely, I really believe that we're going to see a continued evolution in how we go about our business, whether it's at a house of worship or at Walmart. There are going to be different expectations, and I think that as we come up with the best ways to conduct business, I think we're just going to have to expect a continued flexibility with guidelines, because we're changing as we go based on the information and the statistical information that we have. The other thing, though, is I think we are entering into a time where we have the opportunity to emerge out of this in a better way than we went into it. I met with our team, excuse me, this morning, and one of the things we talked about was, in the past, it was very common and expected that if you're well enough to work, meaning you're not flat on your back somewhere, that you would do so, you would come to work. We need to change some of those norms, and there's lots of different implications to going about that. But what opportunity we have, though, is to begin to figure out, how do we lessen the chance of an infectious disease transmitting and being spread in the workplace or at a house of worship or wherever we're going. And really, a lot of times it's as simple as what our moms taught us back when we were 6, 7 years old: wash your hands. It's wash your hands. It's don't touch your face. It's if you're sick, don't come to work. It's those kinds of things. But then in addition to that, it's the social norms of shaking hands. And I'm not saying we'll never get back to shaking hands, but the question is how do we make it a standard operating procedure that we have hand sanitizer available, and it's not something we do just every once in a while. It's sort of baked into our processes. So at Salter Health, we're very much engaged in the conversation with different companies. Tina's team has done an absolutely unbelievable job of communicating and connecting with, I don't know what it is now, Tina, probably over 200 corporations around the valley. And we are regularly dialoguing with those folks now, those leaders, and talking about how do we change business processes. And whether it's a church, a school, or Walmart, Albertsons, or Target, we are really excited about that engagement, because we think that through this education and through sort of an improved awareness of how diseases spread, we can come out of this in a better way than we went into it.
Excellent. Ed, thank you very much. I know we've got some questions in the queue that I'm sure you'll be able to answer when we get to the Q&A session. Thank you. All right, next I'd like to introduce Jody St. Martin. Jody is the Community Relations Specialist here at the City of Meridian, and she also works very closely with the faith community. So Jody, I'll allow you to take it over from here.
Thank you. I would keep my glasses off, but I can't see to read my notes. Let me pull those up here. Yes, I am Jody St. Martin. I work in the office of the mayor. I've been here for a little over 3 years. My position is Community Relations Specialist. That's kind of broad, but what I do specifically is I work very closely with the faith community here in Meridian and throughout the Treasure Valley. That would include churches, faith-based nonprofits, and faith-based owners of businesses. I also work with the HOAs closely here in the city and with our senior population. I'm here to let you know that we as a collective group are here to offer guidelines for your initial reentry for the places of worship, and we are currently in stage 1. But most importantly, people need to have confidence when they return that all their measures of safety have been considered. And if they're not confident, they, honestly, they should not attend. And with that said, like I said, we are in stage 1. And in the governor's specific orders, there is a difference, as most faith-based people will understand, the difference between should and shall. So shall in the Bible, when we say shall, that's something we have to do. And our guidelines say should, which is why it's really important that this group of presenters and that we all do our very best to help you with your shoulds. Let's see, the CDC did outline a lot of things I wanted to bring up. I do have some, yeah, thank you, Sean. I have some pages and resources down in the images down there for more information, or PDF outlines of what we're talking about. When we're talking about, Mayor Simison has met weekly, almost weekly, with some of our faith leaders through this COVID pandemic. And we've had, great conversations. Even last week, as far as I know, only one church in Meridian, as far as I know, met. I have not heard any feedback from how that went, but we want to make sure that things like the direction of traffic flow, are considered. Enter in one side of the building and exit another. And with that said, maybe we want to talk about forming ministry teams where you have ushers that open the door, so people are opening them themselves. They can actually help modify the flow of traffic coming in and out, and that would include maybe the bathroom doors as well. So there's one person that's assigned to the doors specifically, and those going to the sanctuary. Consider having your volunteers masked and gloved, so when they're opening those doors, people feel confident when they're coming in that there's if that there's that extra degree of safety. Also maybe offer the gloves, or excuse me, the masks, face coverings for your congregants that come in if they don't have one already. Consider the continuation of your live streaming for your services. Not everyone that's in your congregation is going to be comfortable coming back in this stage, and maybe not comfortable for quite some time. For our most vulnerable population, having that live streaming available just lets them feel more like they're a part of the community. And what I've heard is that the age factor that this hits mostly for the state of Idaho is 60 years old. And most churches are of that age population. If it's a younger congregation, maybe not so worried about the reentry stage, but if it's the best interest for the population, the most vulnerable, within the age of 60 and over, they should not attend unless they are ready to do so. Also consider the congregants that need to get up. If you have a church with pews, consider the congregants that need to get up during the middle of a service, if they have to use the washroom or leave for whatever reason, that they might be crossing over another person. So maybe split the pew in half. One side enters and exits on that side, and the other would enter and exit on the other side. And a question came up last week with Mayor Simison and some of our pastors is, we've heard that social distancing practices will likely be in effect until there's a vaccine. We don't know what that looks like. So it may look the same, it may not look the same until the vaccine, but we need to keep that in mind until there's a vaccine, that we need to have these social distancing practices in effect. Also, please have information on hand. You're going to be hearing more and more about mental health and the need for care. So if your church has counselors or pastors that counsel, or you don't, make that information available to those who reach out. We have great partners here in the Treasure Valley who are equipped to help out with any of those mental health needs. And the city, we are here to help. So many of you, I don't know who's on this webinar, but many of you know me already. You have my contact info. But I'm in the office of the mayor, and if you have any questions, about other best practices or words from Robert, Mayor Simison, please reach out to me. I'd like to also maybe consider in the initial stages, prioritize seating for people that are more vulnerable if they do show to worship. Maybe have a separate entrance for them, and obviously identify that to your congregation before they come. That would be their point of entry and exit, and maybe have them sit on one side of the congregation or in a separate room if you have that available. Stage 1 does encourage the most vulnerable to stay at home, but in case they decide to come, should have something like that available. Let's see. In a lot of faith practices, they do touching and laying on of hands while praying, or anointing the face with oil. So we're really recommending none of that. Keep your fellowship areas closed or amenities removed, like coffees or snack bars. Eliminate any kind of shared objects that people would touch. And limit the ministries and classrooms that cannot accommodate proper social distancing guidelines. Also, one thing I would like to add is people are reaching out. This time you may not have as many visitors that you know of on your virtual experience with your church, but think about when the church is open back up, that you might have unexpected visitors. So plan for that the service is publicly advertised, and assure that you have room to seat them. I hate to turn anybody away for a lack of places for them to sit. And don't pressure the people who are not comfortable attending, do not pressure them. Avoid stigmatizing that group, just so that they still feel a part of your family. And basically, just want you guys to know that the City of Meridian, along with all of our partners here as panelists, we really care about our faith community and know that you guys are, so welcome and needed, especially in a time like this where there is a lot of uncertainty. But I don't have much more to say because the CDC has those guidelines that Sean's got up there, and they did a nice presentation. But just know that we're here. I am here to help facilitate any questions or answers that you may need help with. And I will be available for questions at the end as well.
Thank you, Jody. Now I'd like to invite Mac Mayer from Life Church Meridian. Mac, if you want to unmute and turn your camera on, you're good to go. And maybe you can share with us things that you're doing in your church and with your congregation. Mac, I don't have sound. Oop. That was your video. We've been looking for your sound. Still don't have your sound, Mac. Sorry. I'm sorry, audience. We had Mac earlier. It's showing him unmuting and muting, but we're just not getting sound. Would love to hear from one of our faith-based community organizations to include on this. So hopefully it's something we can get Mac resolved here. Jody, do you want to jump back in and maybe make a few comments as we're trying to work this out?
Sure thing. And one thing I wanted to mention also with the sanitation guidelines, if your church is not fully prepared to meet the sanitation needs, you should not be opening for services. And I know that some of them are scarce. I forgot to mention that as well.
Okay, excellent. Well, I'm going to go ahead and move on to questions. We've definitely got some questions in the queue. So panelists, if you're able to answer one of these questions, I may call on you, or if you've got an input, we'd love to have your thoughts on this. Probably one of the first questions, and this may come back to Crush the Curve Idaho or to Salter Medical Center, is what percentage of accuracy does the antibody testing currently have in light of virus mutations and in general? Is that something, Tina or Ed, you can answer for us?
Yeah, I mean, I know the answer, but I feel like probably coming from the medical professional, and I would feel best. Ed, do you want to take it? Do you want me to? I mean, I know what it is. Do you want to take it?
Yeah, sorry, I just having to hit my unmute button. Right now, it's basically 99.6% and 100% on specificity. I think that really what we want to concentrate on is that the tests are very accurate. With any test, there are going to be there is the chance of a false negative or false positive. But those things are really no reason to not become tested because the accuracy rates are so high. So I think what we're really focused on right now is what is the percentage of our population that are positive and negative, so we can provide good consultative information to the local and state officials to make good decisions, and that's really what we've been focused on. And I think, Tina, unless we've had new information, our positive rate in terms of antibody testing that Tina was describing earlier is still right around 2%, maybe 1.8, 1.9% on the antibody test. And
Yep,
meaning
here in the
that
valley, that's right.
that's a very, very, very low rate of infection.
Okay. So Tina, this may be a better question for you. Is there criteria for antibody testing, or can anyone now get that test?
That's a good question. Yeah, anybody can get the test. You know, this is a test that not a lot of insurance providers are covering, right? And so you'd want to check with your insurance provider. The cash price for it, if you don't, I believe is $95. It could be $105. It's in that range, and Ed may know better. But that would be the only thing I would ask that people, you know, look into, is that they're electing to be tested. But the criteria really is not the question here. So yeah, anybody can get tested. We have public testing every Wednesday here at the site. We have over 1,000 people that are coming through the site right now as we're talking. I can see the cars lined up and going through the site. It's located right off a 10-mile between the Paylocity building and the Brighton building, right there off the freeway in 10 miles. So yeah, there is not a criteria that you have to meet in order to be tested.
Okay, excellent. A question from Mike online is, can you tell us where we can get some sanitation stations for each entrance of our church? Does anyone have some suggestions for Mike? Okay. I know it's, go ahead.
I have an idea. Sorry. I know a lot of places use the company Ecolab to get sanitizer for their own restaurants and other establishments, so they may be able to be the ones you could talk to. I'm not sure what their supplies look like right now, but Ecolab is a good commercial source for it, if that helps.
Excellent. And the chamber and the city will continue to look for those resources and find ways to share those with people. So we have a question of, what is a good list of guidelines for people actually attending the church service? And so, you know, we may be talking a little bit about what your staff does at the church and things like that. How do you communicate the good guidelines to the people, your parishioners? Jody, do you have a suggestion on that?
Because things are just ever so, you know, in flux. Like I said, I am available for our faith leaders to reach out to me on the most current. And if I don't know and need to touch base with Mayor Simison, I have greater access, I think, to get that answer right away. I do have a guide that I'm able to send to those faith leaders as they need it. A lot of it's just verbatim of what we were talking about today, but if they want to see that and then have links as well, yeah, contact me at the mayor's office, please.
And I could probably help too a little bit, Sean, as well. So at Crush Liquor of Idaho, one of the things that we recognize is even if every company gets a really clean policy in place, and as far as employees, we're all vulnerable to the individuals that walk around this state and their understanding of what they have to do at the personal level to contribute to community health. So we're a 501c3, and we have donations that are dedicated right towards the education efforts. So for example, we have a team that's creating video collateral, training collateral for all the students coming back to Boise State in the fall that explains to them at a personal level what is asked of them. If I wake up and I feel sick, what should I do as an individual to help Boise State stay safe, right? This collateral is going to play just fine for public schools, for any business, in general, the community. And so that's collateral that we're creating with the intent of having that go out to everybody. It's not being hoarded or just maintained for a university, for example. And so as we get that collateral, we're happy to share that. This could be something that an organization like a place of worship could share with its attendees, its congregation, so that they can understand, hey, we're all going to contribute to overall health and being able to stay open as a place of worship. And so that's something that's coming, and we're working on that tirelessly over here.
Okay, thank you. We do have a question that says that they did see a slide addressing group size. Are they correct in saying that there is no limitation on group size? Jody, that was on one of your slides. You want to maybe touch on that a little bit, and I'll go back to the slide.
That is correct. There is no limitation on group size, but as my slide shows, you must follow the social distancing. So with that said, you have to determine what that group size actually looks like in your place of worship to accommodate those strict guidelines.
Okay. Kind of a follow-up of that is in Governor Little's staged reopening plan, stage 4 says that the larger venues can reopen with limited physical distancing. Do we know the difference between strict and limited physical distancing? Scott, I don't know if that's something that the Central District Health is working on the guidelines for, strict and limited, or if anybody has any suggestions on that right now.
Central District Health does not have any sort of guidelines about that at this time. It's a thing we should definitely be thinking about, but we don't have any proper definition of it.
Okay. We did have someone ask that they're watching by phone and not seeing the slides. Yes, all of this will be made available on the keepmeridianhealthy.org website. Afterwards, the full recording, the slide materials, everything will be available for you to watch on your computer and access the files. Do we know if we got Mac online, at least with his microphone? Doesn't look like we were able to get Mac on. I apologize for the technical difficulties that we've had with this, and let's see here, see if we've got any other questions. No, I don't see any other questions in the chat window. Jody, any final comments for the faith-based community?
It sounds cliche, but keep the faith. I mean, honestly, when there are so many uncertainties, we just really have to find our ground, our what makes us strong. Remember what makes us strong. Keep that faith.
Okay. We did have one question pop in, and this may be a question for the medical professionals on the call. Is my understanding is that group singing produces much finer droplet particles than sneezing or coughing, which can stay aerosolized for a much longer time and go further from the individual. Has there been any recommendations regarding group singing?
You know, it's funny. This is Ed. I was wondering if that might come up. I haven't seen anything yet regarding that. I think intuitively we would know that, yeah, that singing certainly could put someone at risk, you would think. But you know, there has to be a certain viral load to any droplets to become infectious. And the only evidence I've seen so far is associated with coughing or sneezing. And while I am a terrible singer, I don't think that I would be producing the viral load in singing as I would in terms of coughing or sneezing. So I haven't seen anything yet, but assume that the CDC is somewhat comfortable with that differential, being that they're recommending that we're okay to go back to these worship services.
One other question that came in, and this would probably have been a great question for Mac, maybe what they're doing at their facility, but Jody, maybe you've heard. What about children's ministries? Keeping children apart, even in a large classroom, would be very difficult. Have you heard anyone talking about kind of some best practices that they're looking at doing?
I think this has been one of the major delays in the confidence in the faith community, in the churches reopening, because it's, you know, although daycares are open, that risk of, you know, someone mentioned in our pastor's call last week that it's hard to keep children social distance, to not share the same toys, or especially the little ones to not, put their hands in their mouths and then touch those toys, to stop and sanitize something once someone's finished. That has been the overarching question in the churches. And, if your church can accommodate the little ones sitting in the service with their parents, that might be a better option. But then again, like I had mentioned before, it would be great practice to maintain that virtual service for the families, maybe with the younger children that aren't confident, with the hygiene standards.
Okay, excellent. I'd like to thank all of our panelists today for joining us and helping try and answer some of the questions. We had about 48 people attend this webinar, and we appreciate you taking the time and interest of learning more on how to be safe and responsible as you open up your churches and your places of worship. Be sure and answer the follow-up survey emailed to you immediately following this webinar. And from that, we can make sure that we get you the collateral materials, including the stickers, to participate in the campaign, the free signage, and the social media material that you can use to help us get the word out and keep Meridian healthy and open for business. I thank you again all for attending, and God bless.